his little smirk thing at the end about Luigi? I mean, I get it. Maybe that was a joke, and I get it. But free Luigi. Really, Bill?
Theme Skyscraper Predator is now live. Streaming Fortnite, Fortnite 030.
It's a 1-month-old joke, but but yeah, they didn't want to bring up that point though. Yeah, the insurance company's left. Yeah. But why?
Yeah.
Is it because of mismanagement and policies?
Yeah. And
why can't you? That's the problem. Is you have the one part, and that's again we're breaking down a joke. So it's like, okay, I get it. It's a joke. There are fallacies in jokes. That's part of the fun of it. But yeah, you gotta mention that part too. People take it seriously. They go, all these idiots on the internet. Yeah. These idiots on the internet. We're on ABC. This is legit. Right. We're big time TV people. We're elitists. All you dumb idiots.
Well, and I don't think either that breaking down a joke is but this wasn't necessarily a joke. And here again, there's no. Bill Burr used to be very logical with his jokes, even if I disagreed. But in this case, it's like, okay, let's believe that all corporations and insurance companies are evil. All right, let's start with that. Let's even scale that back, more reasonable. They're simply motivated by profit, and they would just as soon leave you dead in the street if they couldn't make a buck. They're going to forego, I believe, the most populated state in the union, if it's either number 1 or number 2, California. They're going to forego that giant potential pool of profit just because? There's no world in which, and you're also dealing with some of the wealthiest people in the world, certainly in Los Angeles. They could raise those rates. Why would they leave money on the table? It means that there is no possible way for the business to ensure that it makes sense. How does that happen? Only when government is involved. State Farm, any of these insurance companies, absolutely. If there was a way, they would raise the rates on people who are worth hundreds of millions of dollars in these locales, charge astronomically, and make a huge profit, let alone everyone else in that state of California. It makes no sense. Yeah, they're the number one by a lot, by the way. So 40 million there, 30 million in Texas. So there's a lot of people willing to pay some money. And by the way, that matters a lot. Like, I'm not placing blame on people necessarily, but if you're going to look at something like this, a catastrophe, the most expensive fire we have, I think Hurricane Helene was around 250 million. So if it gets to that point, costly after that. If you're going to look at that, I think these guys need to look like, okay, where do I live? Okay, there's a fire risk. Okay, how is it?
It is bullshit.
That already.
As soon as you fucking land, you got fucking assholes hunting you down with a fucking shotgun.
In some of these instances, policy that California, the state, was providing for you. It's not like you had to sit there with no coverage whatsoever. You just did. Well, that sucks, but in some instances, there definitely was no insurance available outside of the state insurance. The state, I understand that's a pretty... Yeah, but it's also a pretty lengthy process. So there were some people who just got caught at a bad time. Maybe there's some of those, but I think the vast majority of the people that are complaining about it had some significant amount of time. Enough time to get another insurance policy or go through the state policy process, which... If it's a lengthy process, maybe it's a month or two, they still would have had the opportunity. So I don't want us just to go, oh, they canceled like 2 weeks ago. Yeah. Didn't happen. Oh, by the way, did you hear that State Farm has actually canceled their upcoming Super Bowl ad due to the fires, allegedly, which I said, well, that doesn't really make any sense. Why would they pull it? And we're not sure what was in the upcoming ad, but based on their last major ad, it makes sense.
Or they're not there. I'm at work right now delivering packages. I'm carrying this one in, but I figured I would tell you guys how you can make $1,600.
Everything that's written in the Bible is important there for a reason. What the opposing adversarial forces do is they copy everything that God has done, and they create a counter. You have two Enochs. One is the son of Cain, firstborn son, and then you have son of Jared, and the second one, which comes several generations later.
Jake, my brain's just breaking like everybody else's right now.
I look at what happens in Eden as the first revenge, so that the Adamites cannot reach their destiny to be raised up like angels. The giants created all of the wars and the technology of the wars with this knowledge that merged with the seven sciences, and that the violence is imposed on the world, not only on humans, but also against themselves.
Ishtar and the Nephilim and Jesus. If they were to like be with Jesus and do battle, what would happen?
The fallen angels would be gone.
When they're
giants to not only enslave humankind, but to wipe them from the face of the earth.
Hey guys, before you get into this one, I have to tell you, this is one of my favorite episodes of all time. I feel like I say that sometimes, but every time I've said it, it's because it's changed my worldview so much just by being in the room. So I want to prep you real fast for what you're about to experience. Pound for pound, this is one of the more like density. There's a lot happening. It's a lot of information. It comes very quickly. I'm with my new friend, Gary, who has written multiple books on this subject. And so I just want to let you know, this might be one of those things that you occasionally need to pause, because being in the room, like, I had to hit pause several times just to gather all of it together. We talk about pre-flood history, we talk about post-flood history, we talk about secret societies, we talk a little bit about the armor of God and how that can prepare you, and just things you need to know. So enjoy this one, go at it slow. This man was an atheist, okay? Like, he was like a prince of evolution. He didn't care at all. He was raised Christian, was like, that's dumb. Decided he didn't want to believe it anymore. And then just randomly one night, he started studying. And similar to when you read books like Case for Christ, you see these people who they start studying, and there was so much data he couldn't refute it. He read the Gospels, and it all made sense. And there was too much data for him to be an atheist anymore. And so he gave his life to Jesus. And so we're going to go through just a bit of that story and like what it looks like for you to gain understanding the godly way, and it changes your worldview. So enjoy it. I love you, and let us know what you think. Everyone wants to get to the high places, but if you want to go high, you first have to go deep. What's up? Welcome back to the Deep End. We're here with a genius. You're gonna love this episode, and I want to give credit where it's due. Every once in a while, I'll read something. I'll see somebody's interview, I'll hear them, and you can tell almost instantly that someone has, not only have they been given a gift of understanding, but they have worked really, really hard to be able to teach it to other people. So we have Gary Wayne, hailing from Canada, which flew all the way across the continent to be here, and then we're stuck in the snow. But we're doing this interview. It's happening, no matter what. Gary is the author of 2 best-selling books, The Genesis 6 Conspiracy Part 1, How Secret Societies and the Descendants of Giants. What's the rest of that title?
Plan to enslave humankind.
Plan to enslave humankind. No big deal. And then The Genesis Part 2, How Understanding Prehistory and Giants Helps Define the End-Time Prophecy. You call yourself a Christian contrarian, which instantly made me love you. Why is that? Why do you call yourself that?
Yeah, so you can become a contrarian in one of 2 ways, I think. The way that I sort of have defined it for who I am and how I look at things and how I go about things is that I do not trust what somebody tells me or what somebody says that they saw or what they said somebody wrote. I like to verify everything for myself. So I do that in all of my research, and when I do that, it sort of puts me in kind of a natural disposition anyways of standing up against standard dogma and status quo. So whether or not it was through the research or just my gut feeling, I end up being one of those ones that says, well, have you thought about this or have you thought about that? And so that's why I call myself the Christian contrarian, but I want people to know as well that anything that I'm going to talk about, I'm going to have research for. I'm going to be able to back it up in ways that people aren't generally have heard before or prepared for. And when I speculate, and I tell people I speculate.
Right.
So that they know the difference.
Nice. I'm going to turn my notifications off real fast. I'm sorry about that. My team from the business doesn't understand that I'm recording a podcast, so they're texting me. Okay, tell us how you got into this. You said you're in a drunken stupor wandering around Vancouver.
Yeah. Who would think I would end up here? So
where did it begin?
Back in about 1980 or 81, I was living in Calgary at the time, and my brother and his friend came over to visit on a Friday night, and we started getting into the beers, and late into the evening, they started to talk about false prophet and Antichrist. And I was somewhat aware of Antichrist, certainly never had heard of the false prophet at that time.
Were you a Christian at this point?
No, I was full-blown brainwashed and total evolutionary, secular, science, the whole bit. I was raised a Christian, but by the time of the teens and the peer pressure and the education, had totally said, that's nonsense, and I'm going to go with the way of the world and the wisdom of the world. So at this point in time, I was thinking, well, this is kind of a weird conversation, and they keep going and going and going. And then one of them, late in the evening, says to me, how much courage do you have? And of course, I'm like 20 or 21 years old, and I said, well, of course, I've got a lot of courage. Bring it on, right? What is it? And they surprised me, and the question was, if you have enough courage, I'd like you to read a book. And I had no idea what they were talking about. Lots of books were running through my head, maybe even the Bible, because we're talking about Antichrist. And what they said was, the late great planet Earth. To read this, it was by the late, just recently late Hal Lindsey, who was just a astounding writer and way ahead of his time on prophecy in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And so I took the challenge. And so I read the book, and it scared the socks off of me. And I knew a couple of things at that point in time. If even only 10% of what he said was true, I need to pay attention to this. And then secondly is I needed to know whether or not he was telling the truth. Or was he speculating? Or was he distorting the information? So you can look up in a Bible fairly quickly the passages that he's quoting, and that looked to me was accurate, but I need more than that. I'm a contrarian.
Yeah.
And the only way you can do that is you have to become an expert on the Bible to understand whether or not he's being accurate or not. And I think for the most part he was. There's some things that we might, disagree on, but only nuance is not the main sort of thrust, and certainly not significant, I don't think. And so the only way to do that is that the Bible, and I know that's a little bit larger task than one is prepared for. And the Old Testament just is killing me.
Bullshit.
All the minutiae of it, and at that time I was
fired off in this
ready for the
motherfucking
understanding that everything that's written in the Bible is important. It's there for a reason. But I got through it, and I got to the first four Gospels, and by the time I finished, and before, but by the time I was finished with the book of John, I'm going, this is not human. This individual Jesus is talking in ways and saying things that is just sort of blowing my mind. And so this can't be from a normal human. It has to be who he says he is. And so that sort of says, okay, that's given me enough to go back and finish the Bible, but now do proper research. So I thought I'm going to track every prophecy narrative in the Bible because I want to know whether or not now he's taken it out of context. So I get out my highlighters. And then I find out I don't have enough colors. So then I get more colors. Then I find out I still don't have enough colors. Then I'm going, well, okay, this is a lot bigger project than I anticipated again.
And not one.
So I start getting files.
But every person I come across has got a box
prophecy, dividing it into specific narratives. And prophecy has many narratives that helps you with the larger chronology and the bigger picture. Putting those into files. And then I start to add some other passages that I think are important that I want to put those in the files. And this is before computers, right? Or they're just starting to come in, but nobody has them for a few people. Any person with computers and they're probably the size of this room at that time. Yeah, just kidding. They're those the 80s. Yeah. And they didn't have a lot of capacity either. So, and when you do that, you run across Genesis 6 fairly quickly into the Bible. And it's talking about giants. And I'm going, whatever that is, I don't want anything to do with. That's not what I'm here for. And that's crazy stuff. And I'm going to do it for it. But to get all of the prophecy narratives tracked, I found I had to go back to the Bible and name time because you're not sure what you're looking for. You're identifying when you find another prophecy track that lights up a whole bunch of other areas that need to go back. So I had to go through many times to log that. And at one point in time, I decided, well, you know, we've got these giants showing up more than in Genesis 6. They seem to be connected to fallen angels. They seem to be connected to demons. And we've got some prophetic passages that are related to them. So I better start writing some of these down. And I didn't get them all the first few times as well, because you don't realize how much information is there until you get into it. So that's what I did, and that took me through until 1991. 14 years. Yeah, and I decided, you know, I could probably write 14 or 15 prophecy books.
Yeah.
But I'm not thinking about writing the book that I did. I have my own sort of agenda, because I'm a pretty stiff-necked individual, as it turns out. But I'm a contrarian, so I guess that's...
You're such a rare breed, because you're a Canadian contrarian. I didn't think those existed.
Yeah. So, yeah, everybody was sort of, you know, well, like this, you know, like, get away
They're
from
like,
me.
what have we done?
What are you researching? What are you talking about? Stop it. So I decided I would try and write a short book. I don't have a university education. I'm not a minister. I've not gone to seminary school. I have no platform. I've never even tried to write a book before. But I'm successful in business. But that still doesn't give you a platform to write a book. So I thought, well, can I write a book? Would it be published? Would anybody buy it? Would anybody like it? And so I thought I'd write a short book. As it turned out, somewhere along the road to the Colosseum, so to speak, things changed, because I wrote a book that I thought would be fun to do than just try and write a story. And I thought I'm going to try and connect Genesis 6 to Revelation. And so I did that very quickly, and then all the material work there. Yeah, so it's about 10 chapters. And then I thought, because before I started on this pursuit, I was a passionate history buff and a mythology buff. So I understood that what Genesis 6 is talking about is told in cultures all over the world. And I thought Christians might find it interesting to find that there's parallel accounts, whether counterfeited or they're polytheist parallel accounts understood through a polytheist lens versus a monotheist lens. It might give a little bit more solace to this, you know, preternatural flood event, that it's a common history in the world, and it's a common legacy that we have. And so I decided that I would start putting in some Greek mythology, and I thought, well, maybe some Sumerian mythology, and then some Egyptian. And then I thought I should put as much as I can in there, and I put as much as I could, and I was sort of limited, and I was kind of stuck, and I was thinking, okay, so I put all of these references in there, and some of the Greek ones are just fantastic as a relationship to Genesis 6. The Atlantis account. And so then I thought, well, if I'm going to put this in, I need to give some context. I need to show them what the culture was like, and to do that, you have to learn about the religions. Well, I mean, I just read the Bible. That's all I had read before, and look how long that took. I don't do this, but it doesn't go away. There's like this calling, as I talk about in the preface, that just won't leave me alone. So I read the Vedas and the Upanishads.
Googled hoodie, and it's on sale right now.
I gotta get
It's
my
from the brand
charger
Comfort
for the
Clothing,
remote,
which is
it
known
ain't
as the mental health supporting sweatset.
helping me at all.
Literature on religions, and I read all the Gnostics accounts. I read the Popol Vuh. I read the Book of Mormon. I read everything I get my hands on, and I'm making notes to see what I can use for this context. And as I'm doing that, I realize that there's a reference to mystery schools that is part of the education process of the elite all around the world in the 4-class system that they populated in the first 2 classes with this education. And so I thought I'd have to learn more about mystery schools. And then I realized the secret societies take their beginnings back to the mystery schools. And then I thought, well, I don't know anything about secret societies, so I've been down 2 major rabbit holes here.
I'm seeing a pattern.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then I went down for almost a decade on researching secret societies because there's just so much information out there, and I just kept finding more and more information. And so at some point in time, I had to come up and say, okay, how does this make sense? So it went from 10 chapters to 98 chapters, and you might as well call it 100 because I have a preface and an epilogue in it, and I left out over 300 pages. But because I wanted to be able to get it published. I'm a high risk. I'm no platform and high cost. So this is not a good intersection to try and sell on somebody to publish your book, let alone the story I want to tell.
Yeah. Okay. I have questions. I think we all do. When we do these types of episodes, we usually end up having tech issues, so I'm going to make sure we're good. Mics are good, cameras are good.
We are totally good.
All around, everything looks great. I'm sure you've experienced that before, where it's like you're about to.
I'm gonna go over the zero build, but I don't have the charger that I thought I did downstairs, so I'm gonna have to run and get it real I guess I'll just leave my phone here so y'all can listen to this crazy ass discussion, but if you can even hear it because of the fucking music, I don't understand why I put it back to normal, so that could have something to do with it. I put them all, set them all back. Slap the dog shit out you. This fucking cat wants to knock a fucking glass off. Fucking backhand the shit out you. Motherfucker doesn't even flinch because he knows damn well I ain't gonna smack shit out of him, but I would've. You'd have knocked that bitch off before I got to you. I would have slapped your ass off that. But yeah, I'll be right back, y'all.
Say something incredible, then boom, the camera shuts down.
Yeah, it's amazing how many crazy things happen.
Right? Okay, so I want to go back because when you read Cain and Abel, and then Cain's worried that other people are going to kill him, and there are no other people. Like, who is he talking about? And then the next thing you know, it's like giants are like mating whales and stuff. What happens?
Yeah.
Like, what happens from Cain to the Watchers and the Nephilim? Like, where's stuff at?
Can we give a little bit of context for people that don't know this part of the Bible, what you're talking about?
Sure. From me or from Gary?
From you.
Yeah, you have Cain and Abel, who are the sons of Adam and Eve, and Cain kills Abel, and then God judges Cain, and Cain is worried that if God doesn't protect him, then other people will kill him. But at this point in the story, we only know about Adam, Eve, Cain, and Abel, so we don't know who he's talking about. So God has to basically mark him with something to protect him, and then it seems like the story kind of lurches forward, and all of a sudden there's evil everywhere, and there's just a bunch of giants.
Well, and why Cain killed Abel? Can you speak to that real fast?
Cain killed Abel because he's a dumbass. You may be able to add more content for that, but for my purposes, Cain's an idiot. He got jealous and he killed his brother.
Right. Is there more to it than that? Is he just...
There's always more to the story.
Okay, take us.
More to the story.
He wants to know why Cain would kill someone. I want to know what happened.
No, it's just the principle that you've talked about. Not everybody's read that part of the Bible, and so we don't know why. If we don't know why Cain killed Abel, we don't understand why God wouldn't like Cain very much and wouldn't want to protect him.
Just go to ChatGPT and ask why Cain killed Abel.
Great. Done. All right.
How to go from stepbrother beard to stepdad beard. I started using this growth kit from Beard Club, and my girlfriend said it made my beard look 10 times better.
The secret to why Beard Club works so well is this super powerful beard oil, plus special vitamins to help beard growth, and this derma roller to help exfoliate skin. Honestly, it looks so much better now.
The reviews and success stories are honestly amazing. Click through now and get this whole growth kit at a crazy discount.
I won't let my moderate to severe plaque psoriasis symptoms define me.
Emerge as you with clearer skin. With Tremfya, most people saw 100% clear skin that stayed clear, even at 5 years.
Serious allergic reactions and increased risk of infections may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check you for infections and TB. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or if you need a vaccine.
Emerge with clear skin. Ask your doctor about Tremfya.
Yeah, so very interesting information and questions are provided, or questions are raised as you read Genesis 1, Genesis 2, all the way through to Genesis 6. And as a contrarian, I don't like things that I don't understand or might be obscure. And so when I look at the story of Cain and Abel, and all of a sudden the offering is not accepted by God, I want to know why. I want to know why, when he's ostracized, he has to have a mark, because as the standard Christian dogma is, there's nobody else in the world.
Right.
And there won't be anybody else in the world till after Seth is born. And then Seth is born when Adam is 130 years old, according to Genesis 5. And then sometime later, and we're not told how long later, more daughters and sons are born. So after he's ostracized and he has a mark for protection from we don't know who, he finds a wife in Nod, east of Eden, that shouldn't be there. And I'll come back to that in just a second. And then he builds a city for people who ought to be there. And you built cities in prehistory, both before and after the flood, typically with walls. That's why you built the cities, and then, agrarian societies and settlements around for protection. Protection from who? So all of these questions are racing through my mind as I'm trying to understand the early part of Genesis. And so it starts with either Cain has already rebelled and turned before the first offerings, and we understand, or it's because of the offerings. I think it's both. And when I look at this as being the first offerings of their adult, as the first event, adulthood in the Bible comes between 20 and 40 years old. And it's a series of processes. So there's an age of like 25 for priesthood, for example, as you move through that adult period. So this is the first offerings of the first offspring after Adam and Eve were ostracized from the Garden of Eden. And then you have Cain's offering rejected, and we're not given any context. We are, but we don't understand we are. It will come later in the Bible. And because of that rejection, he becomes so jealous of Abel, he murders him. Why? Probably because of the covenants and the inheritance rights that are going to come down through, after this incident, through Seth, and then to Noah, and then to Abraham. It's a process for the creation of the Adamites to be a resolution to the angelic rebellion, to the greater picture. But I want to stay a little bit more focused on the question that you answered, because it's such an important creation of how Adam and Eve are created, and then the story with Cain and Abel. So understanding that this is a direct predecessor of what's going to ultimately become the Holy Covenant. We get the covenant laws and requisites and feasts and offerings in the Holy Covenant with Israel. And with the first fruit, with the harvest, there's a first fruit offering that's part of it. And those are also partially prophetic as well. They're there to have Israel reminded of what their destiny is. And the first fruits are the first of what is ripe with vegetables, or the firstborn with the animals. And so we're told clearly that Abel offers the first fruits, but it doesn't show Cain offering the first fruits. He kept those for himself. And with that, he becomes rejected. And with that, he's going to lose what we would see come down in the angelic rebellion. The birthright blessings, the birthright inheritance, and the Messianic promise. Those are significant things that are at play that we're going to explain as the Bible unfolds. So there's only two, and he's lost. And so he's going to try and eliminate his rival and becomes rejected. But it doesn't answer who he is afraid of. And it doesn't answer why would he even be afraid of future generations? Like, would they even know who he is? If it's a large place, when would they ever find him? Right. And would they recognize him? But clearly there's a threat. So who's this threat? So as a contrarian, I want to know where the people came from that he intermarries with, because they're not supposed to be there. And even if you look at the Eden account, we don't get a timeline in there, but it seems to be not very long. So even if you apply 40 years to that, and even if you took the adulthood to 40 years with Adam and Cain, you're only at 80, and it's 130 years. So you still have a disparity there, and I don't believe the Bible is in contradiction. I just don't believe that, and I've never found that. I find we put preconceived conclusions on the Bible, assumptions, and then assumptions, and then we try and wedge everything else in, and anything we can't, we ignore. And that's not a process that sits well with a contrarian. So the only way I can reconcile that is that there's two different creations. One in day 6, one in Genesis 2. And that if you look at the details in Genesis 2 to Genesis 1, they're in conflict. They don't mix up. And again, for me, the Bible should not be in contradiction. And so you have things like you can eat anything you want from every tree, and you're to multiply and spread around the earth in Genesis 1, but you're not allowed to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and you're not spreading around the earth. You're placed in Eden, and by the way, they're created male and female in multiple and in great numbers and told to populate, where there's only Adam, and at some point in time, Eve is created later, and he's created differently than what happens in Genesis 1, and you have Jehovah of the Elohim being introduced versus just Elohim, although Jehovah is there with the Hebrew word Amar when God speaks, the word of God, the cognate term for Jehovah of the Elohim. Word of God is the logos of the theos in Greek, so it's the cognate term in a different language. And he's introduced in Genesis 2:4, the creation of Adam, the word God as it's translated. And so he breathes his spirit into Adam for a special commission.
So are there two Adams, or is it just how does that reconcile?
Yeah, well, you have male and female created at the same time in Genesis 1. So you also have the word man, which is Adam as well that's used. It's a different Adam in the Hebrew concordance. But Adam in Genesis 2 is a derivative of the Adam that's listed sort of generically in Genesis 1. So the same species, perhaps a different race, and perhaps there's 3 or 4 races, and Adam will be one of the 4 races, but he's created for a specific purpose. And so you have all of these, and there's more. I have documents. One of the most popular documents I have asked of me, if people get a hold of me through the website, be patient. I will get back to you. And I detail all of the differences, and I take everything back to the Hebrew, and you can see the differences there. And there's no day 8. And there's another interesting thing that crops up in this is that sometime after day 7, you have this creation with the genealogies or the Toledoth of Adam for a specific reason, which isn't part of Genesis 1. And some people will say, well, it's additional information. I agree with that MO that the Bible has, but it's never a contradiction. It adds more information, but directionally, it's perfectly consistent. This is not. I also look at 2 Peter 3 as a very revealing passage on this, is that, and it raises another interesting thing that happened in Eden as well, where a day is like 1,000 years. So if one day is 1,000 years, and the people in day 6 are created at the end of day 6, according to the narrative, and you have the beasts of the field that are created before, they could have been created up to 1,000 years before. So we'll fast forward to Genesis 3. The serpent, the Nahash serpent, which is rooted in another Hebrew word, Nahash, meaning a sorcerer, necromancer, wizard, priest, words like that, from polytheism, is going to be the one that deceives Eve and is there previous to Eve. And so by the nature of being a beast of the field, as the serpent is talked about in Genesis 3:1, and the order of creation in day 6. So they could have been there up to 1,000 years before, even longer if there's another gap after day 7, which we don't know how long it would be, that you have a scenario where if they are priests of polytheism, they may be the religion of the people that Adam is going to run into in Nod. And
Adam or Cain?
I'm sorry, Cain. I'm sorry. Yeah, Cain, when he is ostracized and moves off to Nod. So all of a sudden now, all the answers to the questions I have are there, but I can't answer those questions without dealing with the details. And the only way I can line up the contradictions, even the creation order is different. So you could even speculate there was some sort of disaster after day 7, but before the Adam account, that's almost another restart. And I would take people back to Ecclesiastes 1 when we're trying to understand prehistory. In Ecclesiastes 1, it talks about nothing is new under the sun. What was will be again. And then as you read on in that, it says, the understanding of this only brings grief and sorrow. And this is very important as we look back from where we are today. If nothing is new under the sun, what was going on back there? And you start to ask more questions and you go a little bit deeper. So I think where the people of Nod come from are the people of day 6. And that's where the 4 races come from.
Got it. Okay, I have a question about that. I want to make a quick statement for people watching if I can. If you're a new Christian or if like you're just kind of like brand new, because sometimes we'll go into topics that are super deep like this and people are like, all you have to do is just like believe in Jesus. And it's like, yes, I get it. None of this should change your viewpoint of the main things, right? Like Jesus is at the top of the pole, the totem pole. He's coming back. You can, like, you're married. You love your wife. Do you know where your wife is, like, right now? Like, can you confidently say you know exactly where she's at and what she's doing? Hopefully, but maybe not. She might be getting groceries. She might be at home.
Exactly.
But, you know, there's a hierarchy here of, like,
want one, but it's summertime. Listen, I completely get it, but just check this out. Legit on sale right now.
The pursuit of details does not overrule the main thing. And so I don't want anybody to get lost in this. It shouldn't change like Jesus is king. And you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, exactly. This should increase your faith.
Exactly.
And that you are now able to answer questions that the deceivers and those trying to see gap between yourself and God and create wedge issues within Christianity to eat away at your faith, you'll be able to answer these questions.
Yes.
And so I think that we need to understand, if it is the Word of God, it's going to be in perfection.
Yep.
And that the answers are there for us, but we have to ask the right questions and then believe what we're reading. And so this opens up a better understanding of the antediluvian world. And for people not familiar with the term, this big old word for before the flood. I might say post-diluvian, that's also after the flood. And we start to get a context as to what's going on in this world, where you have one individual that's selected to be a deliverer, which is a common MO in the Bible. So you have Noah, who's going to be selected. You have Abraham, who's going to be selected.
Moses.
You have Moses that's going to be selected. And the true chosen one will come through that genealogy, manifesting in flesh as being the Word of God.
Yeah. So you keep mentioning 4 races. I don't know what those are.
Well, we would understand them in just sort of a color fashion, maybe not as politically correct as what people would understand.
Got it. So it's literal race. That's what you're talking about.
Yeah, a little race of humans.
Got it.
As opposed to a different species, and it answers the question to a certain degree as to how the races show up again after the flood. Because you haven't accounted for extra races before the flood. Mm-hmm. How do they show up after the flood? Mm-hmm. And we're told there's only 8 on the ark, but the wives are unnamed. So the wives likely represent the 4 races and why they show up after the flood. And even Cush is associated with the black race immediately after the flood and with Africa. So it starts to make some sense that those genes would come with the wives.
Got it. Well, I've never thought about that before.
Neither have I. That explains.
Have you been thinking about that for a while, Jake?
Just dwelling on it every morning at 6 a.m.
Well, it answers another question. Why is Eve the mother of all living if we have all of these other races that show up after the flood? But the lineage we get is from probably one of those races.
Yeah. Okay. So, Cain is afraid of potentially these polytheistic civilizations that exist elsewhere. And one of the things I found fascinating, and it did take me a while to understand that you were not calling Enoch evil in your book. I was like, what's this man got against Enoch? Enoch was a prophet. Maybe Gary doesn't know what he's talking about. But then I was like, you're talking about 2 Enochs. So there are 2 different Enochs. One is from Cain, one is from Seth. Can you unpack that?
Yeah, every detail in the Bible is important for us to understand. And so we have 2 genealogies that are shown in the book of Genesis. One is the genealogy of Adam that is going to be showing starting at the end of Genesis 1, but then completed in Genesis 5. But Cain is shown to us in Genesis 4 and his genealogy. And that you have names that are phonetically similar, but some of the names in each of those genealogies of those original patriarchs, some of them are identical. So you have 2 Enochs. One is the son of Cain, firstborn son, and an important figure, and then you have son of Jared in the Sethian line. And several generations later, you also have 2 Lamechs. One produces Tubal-Cain.
It's literally a counterfeit. You have one, the ecclesiastic one, and then you have a copy.
Yeah, and again, that's not an unusual thing, but it's important for Christians to understand that Cain is going to turn and worship the pantheon of gods, the fallen angels, and is going to try and lead the whole world away from God. And so you're going to have a counterfeit religion being introduced that Cain is going to be responsible for. And the knowledge that Cain learns from Adam while in Eden.
The word got out that Moses had killed an Egyptian who was beating a Hebrew.
While Adam is in Eden, he's got to run this agrarian operation from the Nile to the Sea of Aqaba, the Red Sea, and the Indian Ocean that's on the south. And if you look at the Hebrew of the words, because the English is giving you the full context, he is growing orchards. He is growing crops of all sorts. He is raising domesticated animals of different kinds. And there's only one of them, and then at some point in time, Eve is created to help him out. So he's going to have knowledge to be able to do this. And he's going to pass this knowledge of the agrarian understanding on to Cain, who is going to go to Nod to meet with people who aren't living in a city. These are hunters and gatherers as we kind of look at the language in Genesis 1. He's going to introduce the agrarian society. He's going to teach them. He's going to teach them. And that has a terrific coinciding with history of the start of the agrarian.
Because I was over here sniping, not hitting a single soul. Couldn't hit one of them, not once, from that far. But then I hit him a bunch of times before he gets on the rope. Then I hit him multiple times after the rope before he gets a chance. Then I switch and I'm still hitting him before he can get the sword off. And I'm still dead first. So I seen him get out of it. Just, that is just frustrating.
Society in writing. And in Sumeria, because he's going east of Eden, which is towards you, to the other side of the Euphrates River. And so everything starts to make some perfect sense when we start to understand these details, and it's a counterfeit religion. And what the opposing adversarial forces do is they copy everything that God has done, and they create a counterfeit of it. And so we'll even have that rolling forward into the end time with an Antichrist figure, which is the opposite or a counterfeiting of the true Messiah. And everything that happens through the polytheist forces is to counterfeit that and to lead people away from it with that deception.
At what point do the Watchers come on the scene?
Well, Watchers are on the scene from the beginning.
Oh, okay. Are they sleeping with women from the beginning, or
no?
Okay.
Not that we're aware of. And who knows what happened before maybe this gap that's between day 7 and Eden. Whereas when people get into the Hebrew of the language in Genesis 1, I won't spend a lot of time on this, but that word was void and formless is the Hebrew word haya, which can be translated as became. And there's a whole bunch of other information that comes with that. And if that was a destruction, then you have a renewal of the earth. And if you had to do that, you would have to reseparate the waters from the below to the waters of the above, as described, to create the heaven, and underneath for life to be is going to be created in Genesis 1. So when we look at the Watchers, when did they rebel? We don't know. But we know that Satan has rebelled by the time of working with, when deduces with the serpent Nahash to deceive Eve, and that if there was 1,000 years before human in day 6, there's at least 1,000 years where these individual beings were worshiping the fallen angels. So you can make a case through connecting dots and a bit of speculation that this religion may have even been in place before Cain comes along. Right?
Somewhere else,
yes. And so the fallen angels, I look at what happens in Eden as the first revenge. so that the Adamites cannot reach their destiny to be raised up like angels, to judge angels for the crimes that they've committed against us, and to be the inheritors of eternity. And so they're trying to prevent that. So by Genesis 6 is when we get the understanding of watchers, as they're talked about in polytheist accounts. But we do get watchers in the Bible listed in Daniel 4 times in the KJV.
I'm going to take a little break.
And watchers are, that's the Hebrew word ayir, which means to watch.
I fuck with y'all. I appreciate
it. Watcher angel, and comes from the Hebrew word which means to be awake. So when you look at the book of Enoch, it puts 4 groups of watchers around the throne of God. So you have the archangels, you have the seraphim, you have the cherubim, and then you have the ophanim, which comes from those wheel angels in Ezekiel 1, 3, and 10, where not the wheel, which is the Hebrew word gagel, but the cherubim-like angels, because they have a face of a cherubim as well, so something slightly distinct. That's the Hebrew word ophan, but on the I am male plural, as in seraphim, you get the ophanim that the book of Enoch talks about. So these watchers are, in the book of Enoch, talked about as the ones who produced the giants with human females, and in Genesis 6 we get the sons of God, which are doing the same thing. And the sons of God are noted as angels. And
I'm gonna see if JoJo wants to play when she gets here in a minute, but if she don't, fuck it. I'm gonna jump on some One Piece, and then we'll probably jump on something else.
Job 1:6, excuse me, Job 2:8, and the cruncher is in Job 38, 4 through 7, where at the beginning of creation,
Under Armour knows athletes.
It showcases every ounce of what an athlete means.
It means I can keep training even in the dead of winter.
I can just put on my gear and pursue what I need to.
Look good, play good.
I get up and attack every 24 like I don't have nothing.
It's the hard-working mentality that will get you there.
The best in the game.
Looking for a reason to try the $5 meal deal with new McValue? Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, and the price makes 5.
So much.
Get more than you expect with the $5 meal deal with new McValue.
Before humans are created, the sons of God and the Morning Star Order are dancing and celebrating for joy. And in Psalms 104 as well, which is kind of an interesting parallel for Genesis 1, particularly with when God sends his spirit, you have a renewal of the earth. Angels are created in Psalms 104 as part of the additional details to Genesis 1. And so these are not humans. These are understood in the Old Testament as sons of God are the watchers, and the watchers in Daniel 4 come from the throne of God in charge of the governance of the world. And the seraphim are in charge of the religious aspect and the kingships, or the government, as part of their authority. And these are serpent-faced, seraphim, 6-winged dragon angels that work before the altar of God and actually work as ministers there. They pull a stone out in Isaiah 6 to put on Isaiah's lips to take the sin away in preparation for the vision that he's about to receive. So when we look at these watchers, it has a lot of context for the sons of God, and are the same ones, because sons of God are, just as the book of Enoch uses, using a term for the watchers as a whole.
So the sons of God are not Elohim? The sons of God are watchers?
Well, you can use it both ways. So the understanding of Elohim is God, an angel, and the God Most High. Okay. So depending on how it's used, so in the uppercase, Elohim would be a singular application.
The God Most High.
Of the God Most High. We would know as El Elyon, right?
Yeah.
And so if it's in the small case, El is the singular one for a God or a angel, and Elohim in the lower case would be multiple angels or multiple gods.
Got it. So when you look at like the Babylonian pantheon or even the Hindu religion, it's Elohim, multiple gods, which could be multiple fallen angels.
Yes.
That are kind of grouped together similarly in a similar function, or am I reading too much into that?
No, you're bang on that. So if we look at both before and after the flood, you have two different pantheon of gods. You have parent gods that reigned before the flood, and then you have offspring gods after the flood. So for people not familiar with that term, let's use the Greek pantheon. So you would have Kronos and Gaius as being the male and female of the parent gods before the flood. In all pantheons around the world, the offspring gods overthrow the parent gods. And so in this case, Zeus is the offspring god. And then he has a different pantheon that he rules from. So you can't kill gods because they're immortal by definition, but you can send them to the pit prison.
Hades?
Hades or Sheol, yes.
Okay.
Otherworld, Arcatha, known by 1,000 different terms all around the world, but all talking about the same place. So you have different vernacular names for the various gods in the pantheon around the world, but they're all the same. So if we roll forward to post-Diluvian pantheons that people might be familiar with, I'll just use the male god. Zeus is the same as Osiris, the same as Baal in the flood. I mean, in the Bible.
Yeah.
And El is the parent god before the flood.
Got it.
Right? And so El and Ashtaroth were the two famous ones creating giants before the flood, but it's Baal and Anat after the flood who move up and take over for that council of the gods that the Ugaritic text talks about, or the Baalim, as they're talked about in the Bible, to rule over the 70 nations of the world, both before and after the flood. And so when we look at this notion of fallen angels being gods, these are fallen angels. And that term comes from, I think, a couple of different ways, all ending up meaning the same sort of thing. So in Isaiah 14, where you have Satan, Hail El, Ben Shakar, Hail El, son of the morning, not Lucifer, should be Hail El. That's an Italian word inserted into the English language for a Hebrew word, Hail El. And typically angels have a name ending in EL, like Michael or Gabriel or...
It's just funny that it's Hail.
Yeah, it's not a coincidence.
El.
Yeah, God
but he's
of hell.
not El. He's even, there's so many ways.
Yeah.
All right, hold on.
And part of the Morning Star Order is part of his attributes. But I'll just sort of kind of get back on.
Okay, don't take a drink of water till he finishes. Okay, good. Then we're going to have to take a break so people can, like, not die.
Yeah.
So we'll keep going. I'm about max, so you let my brain settle.
Okay,
This is amazing.
So in this passage in Isaiah 14, that's when Satan falls from heaven, just as in Luke 10:18, Jesus testifies, he saw Satan fall from lightning from heaven.
Yeah.
That word fall or fell is the Hebrew word nephal. It's the source word for Nephilim. So it carries some of the meaning with it. Nephilim meaning giant, tribe of giant, bully, or tyrant, all reflecting descriptions of the giants, not different meanings. And you put the I am male plural on Nephal, you get the Nephilim, which are the Nephilim of the Shemaim, or the heavenly ones.
How to go from stepbrother beard to stepdad beard. I started using this growth kit from Beard Club, and my girlfriend said it made my beard look 10 times better.
The secret to why Beard Club works so well is this super powerful beard oil, plus special vitamins to help beard growth, and this derma roller to help exfoliate.
And now we understand, if we have that understanding, we have the same polytheist religion around the world with the same rituals and the same hierarchy, just with different vernacular and local rituals.
Yikes. Jake?
My brain's just breaking like everybody else's right now.
for
I've been
yourself.
living a lie, essentially.
to restart.
Yeah, let's just give everyone like 10 seconds. Okay, got it.
Can I ask something based off? It's going to bring us into practical, if that's okay.
Yeah, hold on. Wait, before we go practical, because that's boring.
I know.
One more.
I know.
Is Hillel, Satan, is he at the top of this hierarchy, the
Yes.
rank and file?
Yeah, he would sit above the council of the gods that Psalms 82 talks about. These are the these are the sons of the Most High. So sons of El Elyon, sons of God, is essentially the same term. And the mighty there, the council of the mighty is the Hebrew word El. So El can be used for mighty as well, as part of its meaning, but mighty in this case is referring to those sons of God. And so you have that cognate term in the council of the gods that's being used in Genesis 6 as well. And for other connections, just to put it on the record for people, is that in the Old Testament, angels are referred to as angels, number one, stars, number two, is an allegory, as in the host of heaven and in the skies. And they can be called sons of God, and they can also be called the host, which is the host of heaven. Host is the Hebrew word saba, meaning an army of angels which has rank and order. So these terms are used interchangeably throughout the Old Testament. So host and stars, angels, and the host, and morning stars, and sons of God. This is just a few examples of how they're used, but they're used over and over so that we understand who these beings are in the Old Testament.
Got it. Okay. I know where I want to go from here, but you can take us practical first.
No, you go. You go.
Okay, so here's where we're at so far. Cain is rejected. Therefore, Cain chooses to worship this pantheon, polytheistic type of society. Out of the lineage of Cain comes Enoch the evil. Enoch the evil, as he created writing, correct? Like he was the one that kind of discovered writing.
Yeah, so Adam is going to teach all of his knowledge to Enoch, and he is going to create what is known in Gnosticism and the secret societies as the seven sacred sciences. And Enoch splits those into, Enoch the evil splits those into what we would know as the seven sciences today. Arts and sciences are the same term in the ancient world. So grammar, for example, arithmetic, geometry, astronomy, these types of things that are used today that have the same agenda to lead people away from God, to not give God credit for anything, to slander God, and to honor their pantheon of the gods, which is what we see on university campuses even to this day, with secret societies like Alpha House, Beta House. On the pseudo blue blood Ivy League, you would have the Skull and Bones. As you move up into bloodlines in terms of the aspect of those of that education and the secret societies. So he creates these disciplines, and then he creates mysticism before the flood that I call Enochian mysticism. And he creates the sun and bull worshiping cult of mysticism. And this becomes the worldwide religion, or you could also argue from what we were talking about before that part of this religious aspect was already there, and it becomes sort of a merged sort of a religion that becomes the most standardized religion in the world. And so this is the knowledge that has to be protected as it's being developed.
I'm currently wearing the most Googled hoodie, and it's on sale right now, which is unheard of.
From the Sethites. Not that Seth doesn't have knowledge, but he's going to only use knowledge for the use of good, not for evil. And that this knowledge is going to then merge with knowledge that is provided in polytheist accounts all around the world, the knowledge from the gods for civilization. The knowledge of the book of Enoch That's the illicit knowledge that is going to be provided, that's going to merge with the seven sciences, that will then merge with the creation of the giants and create this Nephilim hegemony, Nephilim order, so to speak, before the flood. That's going to be using the organizational structure of that government of the four class system that they're going to introduce, and Enochian mysticism to control the world. And they're going to develop this knowledge to a point where you have to bring about the flood. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself in terms of just setting the picture of what's going on before the flood. And there's multiple civilizations likely. Biblically, we look at it as a Sumerian society, antediluvian Sumerian, because it's just a knot. But when we look at polytheist accounts, they have 4 civilizations, 7 civilizations, 9 civilizations, maybe even more. Biblically, we're not told about the multiple civilizations, but I think we should be open that there was more than just the one civilization, because Cain could have migrated anywhere, and he still would have needed that mark.
For protection. I want to jump forward for just a quick second, but I want us to not get lost in it, because I want to jump forward and then jump backwards to pre-flood, just so people understand the validity and importance of this. There's data embedded in the history, and you've connected everything together. Based on what you see from the data in history, is it your belief that these Nephilim are still operating today and attempting to just recreate what they had before?
Yeah, we need to keep in mind that nothing is new under the sun. And as we move into the last days, we need to understand that it will be like the days of Noah, both before and after the flood. Noah lived 600 years before the flood, 350 years after the flood. So we can expect there was a regeneration of what happened after the flood. Before the flood, shortly after the flood, and it's been trying to represent itself all the way through the post-diluvian epoch, come to a full resolution in the last victory generation in the last 7 years as well. So yes, the simple answer is yes on that. And if we're at a technology level that we are still progressing, and we're not in the last 7 years, but I think we might be in the fig tree generation.
What does that mean?
Well, Jesus set down a chronological order of events in Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 17, and 21. And after he gives his chronological order of events, that starts with the sorrows, the birth pangs, which is an allegory to understand that generation. Plus, he then gives you 2 more allegories to understand the generation with after the sequence of events with the fig tree generation. And all the events that he said will be fulfilled in that generation. Heaven and earth will pass away, but his words won't pass away. And then we're told it's going to be like the days of Noah. So those are the 3 overarching signs for the sequence of events that will happen in the end time. And so if we're just catching up to the antediluvian technology.
Have you ever heard the term Judeo-Christian values? ISIS.
That they have an ability that's even more than what we have, that we're being, I think, to a certain degree helped with. It starts to explain things. So when we roll now back to before the flood and the details, then understand that the creation of the giants is in the preamble to the flood story. It's partly the context for it. And Noah is introduced at the end of Genesis 5. Giants created Genesis 6, 1 through 4. And Noah is reintroduced and his sons again in his commission after that creation. And then you get the flood that's going to come on, and it's because the whole earth is corrupted and it's violence. So 2 things. Very, very important things to understand for understanding the flood and before the flood and what's going to happen in the end time. The first thing is the violence. And the violence comes from the giants. And the giants created all of the wars and the technology of the wars with this knowledge that merged with the 7 sciences, and that the violence is imposed on the world, not only on humans, but also against themselves as they produce rivals. So this knowledge in the book of Enoch, again, not scripture, but some context to keep in mind, this is the knowledge of Azazel, who provides most of the knowledge, but in this aspect he is providing the knowledge of the arts of war, the craft of war. So that includes not only how to make weapons, but technological weapons. That includes how to use them. It includes the strategy, it includes the martial arts, it includes everything. So now if they have angelic technology, they have planet destruction capability. Particularly if you understand that if the angelic war may have happened before Genesis 1-2.
They destroyed it. They made it void, and that had to be regenerated.
Yeah, and that the earth that was in the water, that's out of the water, that's talked about in 2 Peter 3, that was destroyed by fire and perished, and in the flood, the whole earth didn't perish. But if you had a war of angelic technology that destroyed the earth down to its foundations, then you would have to renew the earth, as Psalms 104 says, when God sends his Spirit, which you have the Holy Spirit, chaos in Genesis 1:10, where you could translate that as the world was void and formless, and those two words, tuho and buhu, basically reflect destruction in terms of applying that destruction, and that God doesn't create anything in vain in Isaiah 45, which is tuhu as well, meaning the same thing. He creates everything to be lived with, that the earth becomes destroyed, that this is the angelic technology that was used in the rebellion to destroy that, and now you have a regeneration or a renewal of the earth, as Psalms 104 talks about. And so nothing is new under the sun. Destruction by fire. And now possibly and likely, my speculation, likely you have the technology there before the flood to destroy the world by fire. Thus comes the flood.
Hey, almost because God's like saying, like, you're not going to do this again.
Yeah, you're not going to do this again, because God has written every name from before creation in the book of life. And until those names are presented when there's to be presented, to be given a chance to leave that name in the book of life or have it blotted out, God's going to intercede, and he's going to intercede more than once throughout our history to ensure that that happens. And so that's the first part of what happens. And also for people who are concerned about polytheists saying God's an evil God because he brings the flood. He is either permitting or bringing the flood so that all the names can have the gift of life that were written in the book of life and have an opportunity to be raised up to be like angels. So there's a good reason for it. And then secondly on that, from a polytheist account, fallen angels.
Yeah, they're the ones messing all up anyways.
Yeah, because giants are too evil and fighting against the gods, and humans are too noisy, according to polytheist accounts. So typically what happens in biblical MO is God permits them to do it, right?
Yeah.
So just as he permits Satan to continually test them.
Right. I have a question. You mentioned earlier, probably 5 minutes ago, you mentioned... The technology we have now is not as advanced as what they had before the flood. And then you said something so sneaky. You said, we're being helped. Now, what did you mean by that?
Well, you have to look at the understanding of the development of our technology today is happening at an inexplicable rate, and knowledge that is changing everything, and it's happening very, very quickly. This is the same scenario that happened before the flood, especially if you overlay the context of the polytheist accounts with God's providing knowledge, and if you overlay it with Enoch, where the same thing happens. So, if it's going to be like the days of Noah, we're just catching up to that knowledge. And they had, in polytheist accounts, the ability to do DNA manipulation as well.
Which we just, out in the East, they just came, like that book was written about CRISPR technology. Have you seen any of that?
Yes, I have. And again, all sorts of knowledge and interdimensional knowledge are coming our way. Quantum computing is becoming merged with AI, which is going to be merged with all of the other technologies to get us to this technology that they want us to get to. And so when we look at the DNA manipulation in prehistory, we look at chimera, for example, as sort of the name that they use for DNA experiments today. Chimera was a creature that had multiple animal parts to it and was created by the gods. So there's a DNA aspect to that, and there is the angelic sexual act that goes with it. And there has to be that sexual act to reproduce by taking a physical form, which have the ability to do, as accounted for in Hebrews 13, to be nice to strangers, lest we come across an angel unaware, and the accounts in Genesis 18 and 19 where angels take human forms, in the Sodom and Abraham narratives there, and other accounts through the Bible. I won't go through them all. So understand they can take a physical form, and a physical form of choice. And that's the soul and the body for their angelic spirit. Jude 1:6 uses the word habitation, where those fallen angels left their habitation. That's the Greek word oikaterion, which means a dwelling place for the spirit. So you have a dwelling place for the spirit in the physical world, which is the soul and the body. And the spirit comes from heaven, and when we die, as humans, our spirits go back to heaven. Counterfeit spirits don't. And so this, stuck here. Yeah, so this is the Xerox spirit that's passed on through the DNA that the angels have when they reproduce to make the giants with human females.
Which is okay. That's why the Nephilim are still here.
Yes. Now, they're called demigods, which is or a goddess and a human male in polytheism, and that denotes 50-50. But what's interesting is in the Sumerian accounts, you have, in the Epic of Gilgamesh, for example, you have Enkidu and Gilgamesh, which are post-Diluvian giants, 6th generation after the flood, son of King Lugalbanda of Uruk, and the mother goddess, bull goddess Nin, produces with Lugalbanda to create Gilgamesh. He is 2/3 god, 1/3 human. So offset the evil of Gilgamesh, and all of those on the ark within the Epic of Gilgamesh story, with Upmatition and all of his family, they are 2/3 god, 1/3 human. So no longer 50-50. Something else is at play there. Maybe it's an allegory for saying that the giants were more godlike in the beginning than humans, or there's an ability to move those fractions around. So can they create and then also do DNA manipulation to create beings like King Hababa in the Epic of Gilgamesh, that Enkidu and Gilgamesh are going to go to Mount Hermon to kill it, where the cedar forest is. Look at that description if somebody gets a chance, and you're going to see all sorts of parts of animals in that particular giant created by the god. So now, this chimera, understanding suggests...
It's a thing, right? Not a technology, but you think
it was a being.
A being.
But it's the term that's used today for DNA manipulation.
Oh, wow.
Because they name everything after their gods and their history. It's just part of the MO. When we understand that, we can see the world we live in more clearly. So yes, we're just catching up to that technology, and that technology was so strong. This is where I get it back biblically to give you some teeth for what I'm talking about, is that the whole earth was corrupted in the time of Noah. All flesh was corrupted. That's the Hebrew word shakath. And it's an interesting word. It can mean destroy. It can mean destroy, but it can also mean to pervert, to ruin, to decay. Words like that. And so all, in that application, all flesh was corrupted, perverted. That means the whole earth was all corrupted in the same way with the same word there that's used. That means the plant genomes were all corrupted. That means all the flesh and animals were corrupted for the most part. Now we understand why God calls a representative of each species to the ark, is to know which ones are not corrupted.
And it's an extreme minority. It's an extreme minority.
Yes, and it's one that can repopulate the whole species.
What a move.
Yeah, so when people like to use the unicorn story, which they have no idea what a unicorn really was, which was not this cute little cuddly thing, but it's a chimera animal that the giants rode into battle on in the occult mythology with a single horn, and as a chimera, it would not be called to the ark.
What about dinosaurs?
Depending on when dinosaurs were actually on the earth, if you look at it, I'm good either in this gap before the renewal of the earth or sometime before the flood. Because nothing is new under the sun. So flood will be again.
That's the first thing. This is the first time I've ever heard an explanation for why dinosaurs weren't on the ark. Is if they were in the gap before the renewal, then when God renewed the earth, he could have just not renewed them.
Yeah.
Also,
and again, who created the dinosaurs? Maybe it was fallen angels that were creating. So if we look at the seraphim again, we're talking about serpent-faced, dragon-faced dinosaurs. These are dragon angels, just as we see serpentine imagery as most of the imagery in the pantheons, where let's say Quetzalcoatl is a plumed or feathered serpent, or Osiris is an Osiris or other mother goddesses, or what they call Uraeus gods, which were flying serpent angels, just as Zeus was originally Cronus, all the the ruling council. And so if they were going to have creatures in the physical world, their preference would be, my speculation, is to have similar kinds of beings. So what types of beings are similar to that? Dinosaurs are now looked at as having feathers.
All right. I'm going to jump on some One Piece. Hopefully my lackluster reflexes and whatnot don't transfer over to that. Now I'm going to fuck with some Skyrim probably. But until next time, y'all stay free, stay safe, stay armed. Hope you and your people are never harmed. We about this bitch, y'all. Ah!